On a Saturday morning, Jake sipped his coffee on the balcony, watching a moving truck parked in front of the vacant apartment next door. Finally, it seemed, the empty unit would have new tenants. Curiosity bubbled within him. Who would it be? An elderly couple or perhaps noisy young adults? His wife, Sarah, was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, and he could hear their children's laughter echoing from inside. It was an ordinary weekend morning, until he caught sight of her. She was tall, with flowing brown hair, and exuded an effortless elegance. Alone, she directed the movers with a voice that was soft yet commanding. Dressed in a simple white t-shirt and well-fitted jeans, she looked stunning in her understated attire. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She nodded slightly, acknowledging him, and he returned the gesture. A strange feeling stirred within him. This woman seemed destined to change something in his life. Later that afternoon, while the kids played in the park, Jake settled on the balcony with a book. He could hear faint music drifting from the neighboring apartment. It was a pleasant tune, perhaps something jazzy. The new neighbor was likely unpacking. Just then, the doorbell rang. "Jake, can you get that?" Sarah called from the kitchen. He opened the door to find her standing there. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Her eyes sparkled a striking green, and she wore just a hint of makeup. "Hi, I'm Mia," she introduced herself with a warm smile. "Hi, I'm Jake," he replied, feeling a flutter in his chest. Do you want some coffee?" "I haven't had a chance to go shopping yet," she admitted, a shy smile gracing her lips. "Sure, wait here." "I'll grab some," he said, stepping back inside. "Eileen, who is it?" Sarah asked from the kitchen. The new neighbor wanted some coffee, he replied as he poured a cup. When he handed it to her, their hands brushed, and he felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice soft. "Anytime. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask," he offered, noticing the gratitude shining in her eyes. After she left, a strange warmth lingered in his chest. On Monday evening, as Jake returned home from work, he spotted Mia at the entrance of the apartment building. She struggled with a couple of grocery bags, and without thinking, he stepped forward to help. "You're so kind." "Thank you," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. As he took the bags from her, their fingers brushed again, and he felt a rush of warmth. They rode the elevator together, the scent of her floral perfume filling the small space. "How are you finding the neighborhood?" he asked, trying to make conversation. "It's a lovely area." "Very peaceful," she replied, her smile genuine. "Where did you move from?" he inquired, genuinely curious. "From Denver. I relocated for work," she explained. As the elevator reached the second floor, she thanked him again, and their hands lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Of course," he said, feeling a strange connection. She stood at her door for a moment, repeating her thanks, her voice carrying a different tone that made his heart race. When he entered his apartment, Sarah looked up from the kitchen. "You're late," she remarked. "Traffic was terrible," he lied, not wanting to reveal the truth. On Tuesday morning, while watering the plants from the balcony, Jake noticed Mia stepping out onto her own balcony, this time wearing a vibrant red blouse that complemented her figure beautifully. "Good morning," she called out cheerfully. "Good morning," he replied, feeling a smile spread across his face. "Your flowers are gorgeous," she said, gesturing to the pots on his balcony. "Your family must be lucky." Her comment stirred something in him, an unexplainable discomfort. "Thanks. They're my wife's work," he replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "Do you want some coffee?" she asked, glancing back towards her apartment. Sarah was inside, and the kids were at school. Sure, he said, stepping over to her balcony without hesitation. Her space was impeccably organized, every detail in place. The coffee she brewed was exceptional. How did you learn to make such great coffee? He asked, genuinely impressed. I used to work at a cafe, she replied, her eyes sparkling as she spoke. Jake sat at the small cafe table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around him. He had been trying to focus on his work, but the vibrant atmosphere of the place kept pulling his attention away. The soft chatter of patrons, the clinking of cups, and the barista's cheerful banter created a lively backdrop that made it hard to concentrate. Hey, what do you do for a living? Mia asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. She was sitting across from him, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I'm an accountant, he replied, a hint of a smile creeping onto his face. Isn't that a bit boring? She laughed, a melodic sound that made his heart skip a beat. A little, he admitted, feeling a warmth spread through him. Mia leaned in slightly, her hand resting on the table close to his. So, how's married life treating you? She asked suddenly, catching him off guard. It's good, normal, he replied, trying to sound casual. Normal? She echoed, her laughter ringing out again. What does that even mean? It's just, it's marriage, he said, shrugging. I've never been married, she said, her tone shifting slightly. Why not? He paused, considering her question. I guess I just haven't found the right person, he said, feeling a strange connection forming between them. Maybe you'll find her here, she said, looking into his eyes with a depth that made his heart race. Maybe, he replied softly, taking a sip of his coffee. Their hands brushed against each other as they both reached for the cup, and for a moment, neither of them pulled away. The world around them faded, and time seemed to stretch infinitely. Mia, she whispered, breaking the silence. Jake, he responded, feeling the weight of the moment. She looked away, a hint of shyness creeping into her demeanor. But the spark had been ignited, and he could feel it growing within him. What was happening? Was he betraying his wife, Sarah? They had only shared coffee, yet the feelings stirring inside him were undeniable. Later that evening, as Jake sat down for dinner with Sarah, she looked up from her plate. Did you meet the new neighbor? She asked, her tone casual. Yeah, Mia. She's really nice, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. What's she like? Sarah asked, her curiosity piqued. She's from Denver, living here alone, he said, avoiding any mention of her beauty or charm. She seems cool. Is she pretty? Sarah asked, a teasing smile on her face. I don't know, I didn't really notice, he lied, the image of Mia's radiant smile flashing in his mind. Maybe we should invite her over sometime, Sarah suggested, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside him. Sure, sounds good, he said, though his heart raced at the thought. That night, Jake couldn't shake thoughts of Mia. He tossed and turned, haunted by her laughter and the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke. Was it normal to feel this way at his age? He was married with 2 kids, yet Mia made him feel alive in a way he hadn't experienced in years. It was dangerous, yet exhilarating. The next day during his lunch break, Jake decided to stop by the cafe again. As he entered, he spotted Mia on her balcony, a book in her hands. She waved at him, her smile brightening the dreary afternoon. Hey there, she called out. Hey, he replied, feeling a rush of excitement. How's work going? She asked, her eyes glinting with interest. Pretty good. And you? He asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Just reading, she said, glancing down at her book. It's a romance novel. His cheeks flushed at her admission. Would you recommend it? He asked, gathering his courage. Come over and I'll show you, she said, her invitation hanging in the air like a sweet promise. He stepped over to her balcony, the space feeling intimate and inviting. She handed him the book, their fingers brushing against each other again. This one's really good, she said, her eyes meeting his. It's about a forbidden love. His heart raced at her words. What do you mean? He asked, intrigued. A married man falls in love with a younger woman, she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. Jake felt a jolt in his chest. What happens next? He asked, leaning closer. You'll have to read it to find out, she teased, her tone playful yet charged with something deeper. As they stood there, the sun casting a warm glow around them, Jake felt the tension between them grow. They shared lunch on her balcony, the conversation flowing effortlessly. You're a great cook, he complimented her, savoring the pasta she had prepared. Thanks. I'm glad you like it, she said, her smile radiant. They talked and laughed, the connection between them deepening with every passing moment. Are you happy? Mia asked suddenly, her gaze piercing through him. What do you mean? He replied, caught off guard. With your life, your marriage, she clarified. I don't know, he admitted, feeling vulnerable. It's just routine, I guess. I can see it in your eyes, she said softly. Her words struck a chord within him. Maybe she was right. He felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, realizing that he was drawn to her in a way he hadn't anticipated. As they finished their meal, the air between them crackled with unspoken words and possibilities. Jake knew he was on the brink of something significant, something that could change everything. Jake leaned back against the railing of Mia's balcony, the warm afternoon sun casting a golden hue over everything. The scent of blooming jasmine filled the air, mingling with the aroma of the pasta Mia had prepared. She handed him a book, their fingers brushing against each other, sending a spark of electricity through him. This one's really good, she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. It's about a forbidden love. A married man falls in love with a younger woman, she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if sharing a secret. Jake felt a jolt in his chest. What happens next? He asked, leaning closer, drawn into her world. They shared lunch on her balcony, the conversation flowing effortlessly between them. You're a great cook, he complimented, savoring the rich flavors of the pasta. Thanks. I'm glad you like it, she replied, her smile radiant, lighting up her face. As they talked and laughed, the connection between them deepened with every passing moment. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows and bathing them in a warm glow. With your life, your marriage, she clarified, her voice soft yet firm. Jake hesitated, feeling vulnerable under her scrutiny. I don't know, he admitted. It's just routine, I guess. I can see it in your eyes, she said softly, her words striking a chord within him. Maybe she was right. He felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, realizing that he was drawn to her in a way he hadn't anticipated. Days passed, and the tension lingered in the air like a thick fog. Jake found himself distracted, his thoughts constantly drifting back to Mia. He had avoided her, trying to push the feelings aside, but every time he saw her in the apartment complex, the electric connection reignited. Mia, you've been a bit distant lately, she had noticed one afternoon, her brow furrowing with concern. Is everything okay? Just work stress, he had brushed off, but the truth was that his mind was consumed by thoughts of her, her touch, her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He knocked on her door, his heart racing. When she opened it, surprise flickered across her face. Jake, she said, stepping aside to let him in. What's going on? We need to talk, he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. They sat in her cozy living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light around them. This can't keep happening, he said, his voice firm. We can't keep running away from this. What do you mean? She asked, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding. Running away from what we feel, he replied, his heart pounding. I can't ignore it anymore. I want you. Her breath hitched, and for a moment they simply stared at each other, the weight of their unspoken feelings hanging in the air. But this is wrong, she whispered. Why? He challenged gently. Because I'm married? She nodded, her eyes searching his. You have a life, a family. That's true, he admitted, his voice low. But I feel alive when I'm with you. I can't deny that. Mia leaned closer, her face inches from his. Jake, she whispered, this is dangerous. Maybe, he replied, his heart racing as he reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek. But I can't help how I feel. Her skin was warm under his touch, and he felt a rush of emotions flooding through him. I know this is wrong, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I can't stop thinking about you. I feel the same, she admitted, her gaze locked onto his. But what do we do? I don't know, he confessed, the vulnerability in his voice palpable. But I know we can't ignore this anymore. In that moment, the world around them faded away. The tension between them was electric, and before he could think twice, he leaned in, capturing her lips with his. It was soft, tentative at first, but then it deepened, igniting a fire within them both. When they finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, everything had changed. They were no longer just friends, they were something more, something complicated and beautiful. From that day on, they found every opportunity to be together. While Jake's family was at work or the kids were at school, they would meet at Mia's apartment, where they would talk for hours, exploring the depths of their feelings. You're amazing, she would say, her eyes shining with admiration. No, you're the amazing one, he would reply, captivated by her spirit. Their hands would brush against each other, and every touch sent shivers down his spine. As they shared stolen moments, their kisses became more passionate, more urgent. Jake would run his fingers through her hair, and she would whisper sweet nothings against his skin, igniting a fire that consumed them both. This is so wrong, he would murmur between kisses, but she would simply smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. But it feels so right. Each encounter brought them closer, and with every kiss, they explored new territories of their connection. They were lost in each other, and the world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in their own bubble of desire and longing. Jake, Mia would breathe, her voice filled with longing. I want you so much. I want you too, he would reply, his heart racing at the intensity of their feelings. They were on the edge of something profound, but they both knew they weren't ready to take that final step just yet. As they navigated this new territory, they found solace in each other's arms, their connection deepening with every shared secret and every stolen moment. The world outside continued on, but within the walls of Mia's apartment, they had created their own reality, one filled with passion, longing, and the thrill of the unknown. Jake had been telling Mia how much he wanted her, and after a month of stolen moments, they could no longer resist the pull between them. That day, Aileen had taken the kids camping out of town, leaving them free for 3 whole days. When he had mentioned it to Mia, her eyes had sparkled with excitement. 3 days, she had asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and thrill. Yes, he had replied, a grin spreading across his face. That evening, he arrived at her apartment, and she greeted him looking stunning in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Today is a special day, she had said, a playful smile dancing on her lips. Why's that? He had asked, intrigued. Because we are finally free, she had declared, her eyes shining with mischief. She had prepared a candlelit dinner, and they had shared a meal filled with laughter and lingering glances. You look beautiful, he had complimented her, his heart racing. And you look incredibly handsome, she had responded, her cheeks flushing slightly. After dinner, they had moved to the couch, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Jake, she had started, her voice soft yet firm. Tonight. What about tonight? He had pressed, his pulse quickening. I want to be with you, she had said, her gaze unwavering. His heart had nearly stopped. Are you sure? He had asked, searching her eyes for any hint of doubt. I'm absolutely sure, she had assured him. That night had changed everything. They had crossed a line, moving from an emotional connection to a physical one. From that moment on, their relationship had taken on a new dimension, one filled with passion and urgency. They met at every opportunity, consumed by their feelings for one another. Mia's soft skin, the scent of her hair, the warmth of her breath, everything about her was etched into his memory. Being with you is incredible, she had whispered, wrapping her arms around him. You're amazing, he had replied, running his fingers through her hair, feeling the connection deepen with every touch. They had explored each other's bodies, learning every detail, every curve. I love this place, she had murmured, kissing his shoulder. He had kissed her neck, her collarbone, every inch of her that he could reach, feeling her shiver under his touch. Jake, you're driving me crazy, she had breathed, her voice thick with desire. And you're driving me wild, he had confessed. They had spent hours wrapped in each other's arms, talking, laughing, and losing themselves in the heat of the moment. I've never been this happy, she had said, her eyes sparkling with joy. But beneath his own happiness, Jake felt a pang of guilt. He was betraying Aileen, the mother of his children. Was he doing the right thing? One day, Mia had voiced her concerns. I can't handle this secrecy anymore, she had said, her brow furrowed in worry. What are we going to do? He had asked, feeling the weight of her words. Have you thought about leaving her? She had pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. That question had hit him hard. There are kids involved, he had replied, struggling to find the right words. I know, but you're not happy, she had countered. But what about them? He had asked, his heart heavy. They'll understand in time, she had said, her tone firm yet gentle. It's not easy, he had protested. Nothing is easy, she had replied. But I love you. I love you too, he had admitted, feeling the truth of his words resonate between them. Then we have to fight for this, she had said, determination in her voice. She was right, but fear gripped him. What would happen once everything was out in the open? Will you leave me? He had asked, his voice trembling. Never, she had said with conviction. I promise. Promise? He had pressed, needing to hear it. Promise, she had confirmed, sealing it with a kiss that held all their hopes and dreams. He had needed time to think. Okay, but don't take too long, she had warned. This opportunity might slip away. She was right. He didn't want to lose someone like Mia. 2 weeks later, he had made up his mind. He would talk to Aileen. But how? What would he say? Should I just tell her I'm in love with our neighbor? He had wondered aloud to Mia, the thought feeling impossible. You have to be honest, she had urged. It's easy for you to say, he had replied, frustration creeping into his voice. I know, but you have to do it, she had insisted. That evening, he had sat down with Aileen. We need to talk, he had said, his heart pounding. About what? She had asked, looking up from her phone, curiosity etched on her face. Our relationship, he had replied, bracing himself for her reaction. What about us? She had asked, her brow furrowing. I'm not happy, Aileen, he had confessed. Her expression had shifted to shock. Why? She had asked, her voice trembling. There's no love left between us, he had said, feeling the weight of his words. What do you mean? She had asked, confusion clouding her features. We're not a couple anymore, we're just roommates, he had explained, the truth spilling out. She had fallen silent, processing his words. What do you want? She had finally asked. I want to separate, he had said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. Is there someone else? She had asked, her voice barely a whisper. That was the moment he had dreaded. Yes, he had admitted, his heart racing. Who? She had demanded, a mix of anger and sadness in her voice. Mia, he had said quietly. Your neighbor? She had asked, disbelief etched across her face. Yes, he had confirmed, feeling the weight of her gaze. For how long? She had pressed, her voice shaking. 2 months, he had replied, the truth hanging heavily between them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, Jake sat on the edge of his bed, his heart racing. He had spent the entire day wrestling with his thoughts, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on him. He glanced at the framed photos on the wall, family vacations, birthday parties, moments frozen in time with Aileen and their 2 children. But the happiness in those pictures felt distant now. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation that lay ahead. We need to talk, he had told Aileen, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked up from her phone, her brow furrowing in confusion. About what? Our relationship, he replied, bracing for the storm he knew was coming. What about us? She asked, her curiosity shifting to concern. I'm not happy, Aileen, he confessed, feeling the words tumble out like stones from a crumbling wall. Shock washed over her face. Why? She asked, her voice trembling. There's no love left between us, he said, the truth tasting bitter on his tongue. What do you mean? She pressed, confusion clouding her features. We're not a couple anymore, we're just roommates, he explained, the reality of their situation hanging heavily in the air. Silence enveloped them as she processed his words. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice small. I want to separate, he said, the finality of his statement echoing in the room. Is there someone else? She whispered, the accusation sharp and painful. Yes, he admitted, his heart racing as he prepared for the fallout. Who? She demanded, a mix of anger and sadness in her voice. Mia, he said quietly, the name lingering in the air like a specter. Your neighbor? She asked, disbelief etched across her face. Yes, he confirmed, feeling the weight of her gaze. For how long? She pressed, her voice shaking. 2 months, he replied, the truth hanging heavily between them. Aileen stood up, her anger igniting like a flame. You cheated on me, she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. I'm sorry, he said, his heart breaking. Sorry isn't enough, she shot back, tears welling in her eyes. I know, he replied, feeling helpless. What about the kids? She asked, her voice cracking. What are you going to tell them? I'll see them on weekends, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Are you out of your mind? You're leaving your family for a woman half your age, she exclaimed, incredulous. Aileen, please try to understand, he pleaded. I love her. Love? You're abandoning your children, she yelled, her voice rising. The sound of their children waking up from the commotion filled the air, their cries piercing through the tension. "Look what you've done!" Aileen shouted, her frustration boiling over. Jake felt his heart shatter as he watched Aileen crumble. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said softly, but it was too late. The next day, Jake moved out, finding temporary refuge at a friend's beach house. When he arrived, Mia greeted him with a mixture of concern and excitement. "You really did it," she said, her eyes wide. "Yes," he replied, the weight of his decision still heavy on his shoulders. "Are you regretting it?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "I'm going to miss the kids." "I understand," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "But you deserve to be happy too." "I know," he whispered, feeling the complexity of his emotions swirl around him. Back in Maplewood, Aileen had hired a lawyer and was preparing for a divorce. She was determined to make it difficult for him to see the kids. "It's normal," Mia reassured him. "It will get better over time." But the whispers in the apartment complex were hard to ignore. Neighbors cast sideways glances, and Jake felt the weight of their judgment. "Don't let them get to you," Mia said, but it was easier said than done. At work, his boss noticed the change. "Is everything all right at home?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I'll handle it," Jake replied, feeling the cracks in his life deepen. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. He could see the kids only twice a month, a reality that tore at his heart. "It will get better," Mia reassured him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Are you sure?" he asked, uncertainty creeping in. "Absolutely," she said, her voice steady. "We're building a new life together." As the months passed, Jake found solace in Mia's support. They shared quiet evenings, laughter, and dreams, but the shadows of his past lingered. "You'll have moments of doubt," Mia said one night as they lay together, "but remember, this was the right decision." "I'm happy with you," he replied, though thoughts of his children sometimes crept in, leaving him with a bittersweet ache. A year later, they exchanged vows in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends. "We finally did it," Mia said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Yes," Jake replied, a smile breaking across his face. "Was it worth it?" "Absolutely," she said, her hand squeezing his. Their relationship with the kids began to mend, and Jake felt a sense of hope. "Dad, are you happy?" his eldest son asked one day. "I'm really happy," Jake replied, his heart swelling. "Then I'm happy too," the boy said, and those words meant the world to him. Mia embraced the kids, becoming a wonderful stepmother. "They're your greatest treasure," she would say, and Jake knew she meant it. Together, they navigated the complexities of their blended family, finding joy in the little moments. "I've never regretted a thing," Jake would tell Mia, and she would smile, knowing that love had come to him when he least expected it. Their story was a testament to the unexpected nature of love, showing that sometimes, making difficult choices could lead to true happiness. Subscribe to the channel,